Man, turn on the news these days and it feels like, well, conflict everywhere you look, suffering everywhere you look. It's kind of heavy, you know?
Yeah, it really does make you wonder, like, has it always been this way throughout history?
Right. And it's interesting how, for a lot of people, faith is where they turn for answers, for comfort, for hope even.
Makes sense. If you're looking for guidance in tough times, those ancient texts, they really resonate, even today.
Totally. So that's what we're diving into today. We're looking at some verses from the Bible, specifically ones that deal with peace, with justice, with how we're supposed to act when things are really rough.
Always a timely topic, for
Yeah,
sure.
no kidding. And to guide our deep dive today, we've got this source, Texto Pegado. It's got some really interesting questions about faith in times of war, and it pairs those questions with specific Bible verses.
So that's a good framework.
Yeah, I think so. So right off the bat, it asks, what does the Bible actually teach about peace, about resolving conflict? And it points us to a verse I'm sure you know, Matthew 5.9.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God.
Yeah, that one. I've always liked how that sounds, but honestly, never really thought about what it means, like practically.
It's powerful, isn't it? Because it's more than just saying, don't fight. It's an active thing, being a peacemaker. You're putting that peace out into the world.
It's like taking a stand, almost, even when it's hard.
Exactly. And maybe especially when it seems like everyone else is choosing a different path.
Huh. So, switching gears a bit,
Mm-hmm.
what about when we're dealing with injustice? Violence, how do we act then? Texto Pagado brings up Romans 12.1 for this one.
Ooh, yeah. That's a tough one. It says, do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord.
Heavy stuff.
Definitely challenge, right? Because that's about forgiveness, ultimately. About letting go of that very human desire for revenge and, I don't know, trusting that there's a bigger plan, a higher justice at work.
Yeah, I can see how that would take an immense amount of faith, especially in the moment, when something bad has happened to you. Okay, so this next one from the source, I gotta admit, this is one I'm really wrestling with. Is there ever a biblical justification for war, for violence? And the verse it gives us is Ecclesiastes 3.8. It says, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. And like just reading that, I'm thinking, ugh.
Yeah, no easy answers there. Makes you think about a lot of things we grapple with today. It's almost like the Bible is acknowledging that conflict is a part of life, a part of this world.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say war is good, just that there's a time for it.
Which makes me think about the whole idea of just war theory, you know?
Yeah.
Idea that maybe there are situations where going to war is morally right. Like if you meet certain criteria.
It's true. It's something people have been debating for centuries. And of course, you've got the whole other side of the coin, pacifism. The belief that violence is never the answer, no matter what.
So much to unpack there. And I guess taking it even further, we get to what might be the most challenging teaching of all. Texto Pagado asks us straight up, what does Jesus teach about how we should treat our enemies? And the verse is Matthew 5.44.
Right. And that's the one a lot of people struggle with, I think. Because it says, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
Man, talk about a high bar.
Right. And it's important to remember, it doesn't mean we have to agree with what they're doing or say that their actions are okay. It's about making a different choice, a harder choice a lot of time.
About not getting stuck in that cycle of hate, even if someone else started it.
Exactly. It's choosing radical empathy, radical compassion, even when every part of you wants to do the opposite.
I can see why that one's so tough. So, okay, we've talked a lot about war, about conflict, injustice. Where's the hope in all of this? The last question in Texto Pagado points us to John 16.33.
Which says, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. There's a reason that one's offered is comfort, right?
Yeah.
Because even when it feels like everything's falling apart, that faith, that belief, it can be a source of strength.
It's like a reminder that no matter what's going on outside, there's still something bigger than us, something good.
And that no matter what we're going through, we don't have to go through it alone.
I like that. So even though this whole deep dive started with some pretty heavy questions about war, I feel like we're ending with something else. Like, well, it's about peace, it's about justice, but most of all, it's about how we treat each other, even when it's the absolute hardest thing to do.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And if there's one thing I hope people listening take away from this, just one thing, it's that even in the face of all that conflict, all that darkness, We always, always have a choice in how we respond. We can choose peace. We can choose compassion. We can choose love.